Hello gainers, welcome to the channel called Fitter Philosophy. I'm Ralphie, your host, and this channel is about stoic, philosophical, practical, experience-based philosophy which really works in real life, because real life is what happens while we're busy pretending to live. Right, that's the beginning. There's more to come. This particular video is a short story really about young Martin, who I knew briefly in passing, not as a friend, but as someone who lived within the community that I worked in Glasgow in the 1990s. I was an undertaker, and basically the local funeral parlour was usually a good source of community gossip, because that's the way things go. And young Martin was a fairly anonymous kid in the neighbourhood. He went through school achieving very little, and he wasn't seen much of in public because he was picked on and bullied. So his defence mechanism was to hide himself away, which he did so relatively successfully. He didn't have a lot of luck because his father left him and his sister when they were still young kids. The father went to prison for admitting to a crime which he may or may not have committed, but he certainly took the hit. And as soon as the father got out of prison, never even visited his family, never notified them, nothing. He just simply promptly disappeared completely. And isn't that unusual? So the mum was left to get on with it. She didn't enjoy good health. She inevitably drifted towards medical prescription dependency and antidepressants and all the rest of the stuff that accompanies that, the therapy sessions and all the rest of it. So he was basically bringing up his young sister as well as himself. He did get a part-time job in a local shop, basically carrying, lifting, mending, cleaning, anything for very little money, but he scraped by. And then one day, when he happened to be in town, he was standing in a queue in a newsagent's buying a packet of sweets for his little sister to take her home as a treat, when the woman behind him dropped her purse. So he stooped down to pick it up and he handed it back to her, and their eyes met and they fell in love. She was Australian. She loved him immediately. He, because he hadn't got a lot of love in his life, responded to that immediately. They went to a coffee shop and had a cup of tea, and then a year later, when she returned to Australia, he went with her. Excuse me, I've got a visitor. Come here, you. Come here, you. Come and meet my audience. Come and meet the viewers. This is Billy the cat. Yeah, the domesticated moggy with still got a wild side to him, but he's a very good-natured puss cat. There you go. You going up on the table, boy? There you go. Right. He went to Australia with her. When she returned to Australia, he went with her to meet her family. They talked about getting engaged, but when they arrived, he didn't have a job, and one of her old boyfriends, who got on well and was the preferred option for her father, he kind of stepped in and befriended Martin, but only to set him up. However, her big brother spotted what was going on, took Martin's side, and to get away from the growing family storm, because it was turning into a storm, they went to work in the mines. There's big mining companies in Australia, right out in the outback, miles and miles from nowhere. So Martin went out with his girlfriend's big brother, and they did a season there. 3 months on, 1 month off, something like that. And suddenly, for the first time in his life, he was making money. He got on with everybody because that was his personality and his nature, because he had to get on with people to survive where he came from. So he was good at it. He was good at building the bridges, and that's what he did. He was kind of adopted by one of the junior managers at the mine, who promoted him to supervisor. And at that point he started learning skills, and the skills took him to other parts of Australia, to other mine development facilities, where, because of his desire to learn and honesty when he made mistakes, and his work ethic, is the fact that he was what you call a grafter. He really started doing well for himself, and being out in the back of Beyond, he wasn't spending much money. He was saving, because when you've never had money, it's easier to save money because you know what it's like without it. You've never got in the habit of spending money, and therefore he understood the true value of it. Now the consequence of that was that he made a name for himself, and he became a specialist, and specialising in, goodness knows, it could be geology, it could be installation of equipment. I'm not a miner, so I don't know much about it, but Martin certainly did. At this point, he's completely split up with his girlfriend. They remain friends. She goes with her first Australian boyfriend, who was the preferred option of the father, and they're divorced within 2 years of their marriage. But Martin won't go back to that. The damage has been done. He starts travelling internationally and helping out at other mining operations, because there's more and more technology being involved in mining. And of course, as often as he can, he goes back home. He gives money to his mother. He gives money to his little sister, who's going to college to study nursing. He pays for it all. He supports his mother by helping her to move away from the environment that's clearly stressing her. So she's moving out the city into a more rural town where there's still activity, but she can start again. And funnily enough, the change of environment really helped his mother. Unfortunately, shortly thereafter, she got cancer. But this is what happens in life. And the reason we knew about this, I know about this, is because the local busybody, I'm saying busybody, but I really mean the local ladies in the community who take a wider interest and keep an eye on people. It's called community bonding. They were aware of the situation, and at one point they approached Martin to sponsor one of their own community projects, and he was more than willing. He visited them, he sat down, had tea with them, and what they witnessed was a young, unprivileged boy, literally through a series of totally random chance encounters, turn his life around completely. And what they took from that was, you can have children at school who are not doing well, and they're not academic, and they're not learning, and they're not getting qualifications. But perhaps it's not actually the problem lying with them, it's lying with the environment and the behaviour of institutions responsible for learning, which, by the way, in today's world is a very serious issue. It's actually getting to the stage that it's disrupting human learning and the acquisition of collective human knowledge, in my opinion. which is worth very, very little. So to conclude with Martin, he eventually he settled in Vietnam. Vietnamese wife, Vietnamese children. Last I've heard, they're doing very well. His Vietnamese is coming on very well. He brought them over to Scotland to introduce them to his mother, his sister, and as he was passing through Glasgow, he stopped by to introduce them to the community elders, the ladies in the community that do what they can collectively to help out with the grinding poverty imposed on communities by the state. It's as simple as that. And this is a real life story. Martin is not an isolated situation. There are many Martins out there, but there are also, and I ask you to think about this, there are Martins there who never have that chance encounter to turn their lives around, because often the biggest obstruction in people's lives is not getting that chance encounter, lucky break, which creates opportunities which many people would grab at and take responsibility for and own, because these chances are not generally there, and it's part of the human condition. And there you have it. It's something for us. I mention this in passing because often we're so wrapped up in our own lives that we can forget how challenged we are or fortunate we are, or we don't get a truly accurate reading on our own position in life until we get some intimate insight into other people and the challenge they faced, how they coped, how they got on with it. And some people, they get ahead. They find, and it's not just, I'm not talking about the money, I'm not talking about power, I'm not talking about privilege. That's all fleeting and superficial in the grand scheme of things. It's remarkably superficial. I'm talking about having enough for a successful life, free of stress, knowing enough to look after our health, to protect ourselves and defend ourselves in life. And there's so much to learn from other people's stories because they inform our own story.